What's up, Falcons Nation? It's your boy Jew coming at you with another Atlanta Falcons video. As always, Falcons Nation, rise up. In today's video, I want to give you guys some quick Atlanta Falcons news. And then I also want to talk about Keanu Neal hitting free agency. But if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. Hit that notification bell so you'll know when I've done Atlanta Falcons content or if I've done Cleveland Cavaliers content. I really appreciate each and every one of you guys. We are on the road to 1,000 subscribers. So definitely continue to hit that subscribe button. We're about 90 some subscribers away from 1,000. So I couldn't have done it without you guys. I really appreciate all of you guys continuing to support the channel. But with that being said, let's jump right into the video. So like I was mentioning, in today's video, I want to give you guys some quick Atlanta Falcons news. If you haven't heard, yesterday, James Carpenter, former offensive lineman for our Atlanta Falcons, was cut. He was a cap casualty. It comes as no surprise. James Carpenter was signed by the Falcons 2 years ago, him and Jamon Brown. It was a bad signing by Thomas Dimitroff, him trying to fix the offensive line and trying to correct the mistakes he made in the draft and not drafting trench players. And he basically double dipped. In 2019, I believe it was, he went out and drafted Chris Lindstrom and Caleb McGarry to try to cover up his mistake in signing Jamon Brown and signing James Carpenter to those big deals that he signed them to in the offseason in 2018. So comes as no surprise. I pretty much knew that James Carpenter would be cut. Ever since he's been with the Atlanta Falcons, he's been battling injuries, and he's basically just had subpar play, to be completely honest. He just didn't live up to the contract that he was given, and I wish James Carpenter nothing but the best in free agency if he decides to keep playing. But I am glad that he's gone from our Atlanta Falcons because he didn't live up to that contract that he signed a couple years ago. So that's pretty much all I had in Atlanta Falcons news. Now, also yesterday was breaking news. Keanu Neal, former strong safety for our Atlanta Falcons, former Pro Bowler Keanu Neal as the strong safety position, will hit free agency. The Falcons didn't franchise tag him yesterday. The deadline was to franchise tag him yesterday evening before 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and the Falcons decided to not re-sign Keanu Neal or not franchise tag him as of yesterday. It was all over AtlantaFalcons.com, all over Twitter and Facebook that Keanu Neal was going to hit free agency. So I wish Keanu Neal nothing but the best. He is one of those Falcon players that I did want the Atlanta Falcons to re-sign because Keanu Neal, to me, does fit the Dean Pease attitude of being aggressive, being a safety that could blitz, being a guy that can come down in the box, and being a versatile guy that can also cover. But in this instance, I understand why the Falcons didn't bring him back. Everyone knows that we're in cap hell right now, and we're trying to get under the cap, which I believe is at around 185 million is the cap this year for all of the teams. So we're trying to get under the salary cap. And I believe bringing back a Keanu Neal was just going to be too expensive for our Atlanta Falcons. So they decided to move on. I really think that the injuries that he had in back-to-back seasons, those catastrophic injuries, the Achilles and the torn ACL, was another thing that really probably scared the front office, is possibly bringing him back, especially because we don't have a good track record with injured players. If you think about it, Todd Gurley being signed last year with the arthritic, knees or arthritis in his knees. Also, us drafting a guy like Takk McKinley and bringing him, trying to hold on to him for the 4 seasons that we had him. He continued to battle injuries, and he seemed to miss more games than he actually played. So I really think that the Atlanta Falcons were just really afraid to give Keanu Neal a big contract or even a contract extension due to the lower leg injuries that he's had. He's had some huge season-ending injuries, back-to-back seasons. He did have a pretty good season, bounce-back season last year with over 100 tackles and 1 interception and a fumble recovery last year. But I do understand why the Falcons decided to move on, because we have a bad history, like I was saying, a long history of trying to sign players that have injuries, and they end up not panning out. So I do understand why the front office, it's a new sheriff in town with Terry Fontenot and with Arthur Smith, and I believe they just didn't trust Keanu Neal's body not to break down. While we're giving him that big contract. So I completely understand why they decided to move on. Keanu Neal is one of my favorite players from on the defensive side of the ball, just because of his physicality. He seemed to be a great leader in the locker room, not a guy that said a lot in the locker room or said a lot in the media. He was a kind of a guy that was like a Grady Jarrett. He was kind of a guy that would just put on his hard hat and go to work. He was one of those guys that he led by example by just his actions. He was an action type of leader. He wasn't one of those guys that was really vocal. He didn't speak to the media a whole lot. Ricardo Allen was really the voice of the defense to me, and the vocal leader of this team. To me, Keanu Neal was one of those guys just that, kind of like a Julio Jones, do as I do, go as I go, like a Grady Jarrett, a guy that was just a hard worker, and one of those guys that I really think was just a great guy off the field. From what I hear from all of the Atlanta Falcons players, when Keanu Neal was here, he was one of the guys that was beloved in the locker room. One of the best teammates of these guys in the locker room. Like I said, a locker room leader, and one of those guys that was very physical on the field. So I do think that our Atlanta Falcons are going to miss a guy like Keanu Neal. His presence on the field, of guys being afraid to run across the middle to catch a pass, or running backs, tiptoeing to the line because they knew Keanu Neal was one of those guys that played in the box, and he was one of those guys that would blow you up if you didn't have your head on the swivel. So I really am going to miss Keanu Neal. A ton of plays that I remember from Keanu Neal, highlight plays he had when he hit Jimmy Graham. I believe it was a Monday Night Football game, if I'm not mistaken. We played the Seahawks in Seattle. He hit Jimmy Graham, the former tight end of the New Orleans Saints, at the goal line. At this point, he was playing for the Seattle Seahawks, and Keanu Neal hit him at the goal line and stopped him from getting in. Another huge play that he had huge hit that he had against the Saints when he blew up Willie Snead and caused a fumble in 2016, the year we went to the Super Bowl, were the two plays that really stood out to me for Keanu Neal. But he was, like I said, one of those guys that was like a Cam Chancellor type, the former Seattle Seahawk, one of those safeties that you just didn't want to see, in the hole. You didn't want to meet him in the hole. He was one of those guys that was one of the best tacklers on the team. To me, one of the hardest hitting players in the league, and one of those guys that every defense needs on their team. So I definitely hope in the draft we can go and find a guy in the draft that could possibly come in and play that Keanu Neal role. Two guys that I've kind of seen tape on in this draft that I think could come in and be like a Keanu Neal is a kid named Nasruddin. He plays for the Florida State Seminoles. He's a strong safety. He's about 6'4", 220 pounds. He's a guy that I think that you should go watch some tape on. He's a guy that I think the Falcons could possibly draft to come in to replace a Keanu Neal type. Another guy, I believe he's a free safety though, but he's a guy that's an intimidator as well, is Andre Cisco out of the University of Syracuse. I believe he's about 6'1", if I'm not mistaken. And he's another guy that's a playmaker on the ball, kind of like an Ed Reed type that can be a ball hawk, but also can be a hitter at times. Because if you remember when Ed Reed was in the league with the Ravens, Ed Reed could do it all. Not only was he a ball hawk, but he was one of those guys that will blow wide receivers up and tight ends up if you didn't have your head on the swivel. He was a guy that could hit, and he was a guy that could cover. So I think those are the two guys I will keep an eye on. That could be safeties that the Falcons look at. First, Andre Cisco, I think, is a guy that flashes every time I watch his tape. Could be a guy that would replace a guy like Keanu Neal. And then the next guy will be Nasruddin, who possibly will be a later round pick. And he's a guy out of Florida State that fits the mold of a Keanu Neal, physical, caused forced fumbles while he was there in Florida State. Was one of those guys that's built like a linebacker but can cover and had range, kind of like a Cam Chancellor, a little bit taller than a Keanu Neal at 6'4" for Nasruddin. But those are two guys, Andre Cisco and Nasruddin, would be the two guys that I would be looking at if I'm the Falcons. Another guy that's on the roster that I think a lot of people are forgetting about is a Jalen Hawkins that we drafted last year out of Cal. He's another guy that seemed to be a guy that could be a hitter, a hard hitter for our team, and could be a better coverage safety than a guy like Keanu Neal, because Keanu Neal was a guy on our team that was great at tackling, great straight line speed, but he wasn't the best when it came to coverage. He was a decent cover, strong safety or cover safety, but he wasn't the best in coverage against tight ends and being in the slot and stuff like that. He kind of struggled at times with covering guys out in space. So Keanu Neal was one of those guys that was better in short area quickness, short spaces, and playing in a phone booth. Keanu Neal was one of the guys that was one of the best at doing that, but he wasn't one of the best guys when it comes to being able to man up and man coverage against guys. So I do think that bringing in another safety like Andre Cisco, or bringing in a guy like Nasruddin from Florida State, I think those are the two guys that we possibly could bring in the draft. Another guy that could be a guy that we look at as well is Trevon Merrick out of TCU. He's a guy that I believe everybody has highly touted as like a first round safety, and maybe the Falcons trade back, and they go for a guy like a Trevon Merrick. I've seen Trevon Merrick's tape. To me, he's not one of the hardest hitters in the game, but he's a great cover corner, or a great cover safety, excuse me. So I definitely think that the Falcons have their, we're going to have it, our work cut out for us heading into this free agency period, especially now with losing a guy like Keanu Neal, because to me, Keanu Neal was one of those impact players on that third level in the secondary. And now with us losing both of our safeties, it's going to be very interesting what we do in free agency and what we do in the draft. A guy that we possibly could bring back on a shorter deal, and he's a younger player coming off an injury, is Damontae Kazee. I'm not too sure if the Falcons are going to bring back Damontae Kazee after he suffered a torn Achilles last year, but he definitely could be one of those guys that the Falcons are looking at, could possibly bring back. That's a free agent on maybe a shorter deal. He is a little bit younger than a Keanu Neal and better in coverage. He could be a guy that we can use at the free safety role or the strong safety role. But I believe that Damontae Kazee, would be better suited for the free safety role. He's one of those guys that's a ball hawk, and I think he's a better coverage guy than tackler and hard hitter. But with that being said, you guys let me know what you think of the video. Do you guys, how do you feel about Keanu Neal not being brought back? Personally, I think that Keanu Neal possibly will sign with the Dallas Cowboys because Dan Quinn was hired as their defensive coordinator, and I believe the Cowboys are in need of safety help. I could definitely see Keanu Neal being a Dallas Cowboy and signing with the Dallas Cowboys. But you guys let me know, like I said, what you think of the video. Leave your comments below if it's a video or a player you would like me to take a look at in the upcoming draft. The draft and free agency is fastly approaching. I believe free agency starts next week on March 17th, which is next Wednesday. So we're about a week away from free agency. So I'm very interested to see what our Atlanta Falcons is going to do in free agency. But with that being said, this being your boy Jew. If you haven't already hit that subscribe button, please go hit that subscribe button for your boy. Hit that like button and hit that notification bell so you'll know when I've done Falcons content. I really appreciate each and every one of you guys. As always, Falcons Nation, rise up. Peace.